Tonight, we step into one of the strangest and most heartwarming tales of World War II. It is the story of a soldier unlike any other, a comrade who marched, fought, and lived alongside men, yet was not a man at all. This is the story of Wojtek the Bear, who became a brother to soldiers, a symbol of resilience, and perhaps the most unusual recruit ever to wear a uniform in the midst of humanity's darkest war. The story begins in 1942 in the vast deserts of Iran. A group of Polish soldiers, part of the Anders army, made up of men released from Soviet camps, were moving through the region, weary, hungry, and uncertain about their future. Their homeland had been torn apart by invasion, their families scattered, and their lives uprooted by the chaos of war. Along the road, they encountered a young boy. In his arms, he carried a tiny, orphaned bear cub, so small that it could barely open its eyes. Its mother had been killed by hunters, and the cub had been left defenseless. Moved by compassion, and perhaps also desperate for a companion in their own exile, the soldiers decided to buy the cub. They traded a few cans of food, some chocolate, and a Swiss Army knife. In return, they received a bear, an unlikely recruit who would soon become the beating heart of their unit. The cub was named Wojtek, a common Polish name that means joyful warrior. At first, he was simply a pet. The soldiers bottle-fed him with condensed milk, wrapped him in blankets to keep him warm, and nursed him with care. But very soon, Wojtek became something more. He became family. As Wojtek grew, his bond with the soldiers deepened. He learned to walk on his hind legs, to mimic the movements of his human companions, and even to drink beer straight from the bottle, a habit the soldiers found endlessly amusing. He was especially fond of cigarettes. The men would hand him a lit one, which he would sometimes chew up, and other times puff on clumsily before swallowing it. In the harshness of war, where death and separation weighed heavily on everyone's mind, Wojtek brought laughter, warmth, and a reminder of innocence. The soldiers treated him not as an animal, but as one of their own. He slept in their tents, rode in their trucks, and marched alongside them as they crossed deserts and mountains on their way to join the Allied fight. The Anders army, made up of exiled Poles, carried with them deep wounds and heavy burdens. Wojtek the Bear became a balm to those wounds, something that reminded them of home and of the possibility of loyalty, love, and joy, even in war. At first, Wojtek's role was that of a mascot, cheering the men, entertaining them, and giving them something to care for. But by 1943, when the Polish, the Second Corps, joined the British Eighth Army in the Middle East, Wojtek's reputation was growing. The problem came when the unit was ordered to be shipped to Italy. Regulations banned animals from boarding military transport ships. The soldiers could not bear to leave Wojtek behind, and so they came up with a solution. They enlisted him officially into the army. Wojtek was given a rank, a serial number, and a place on the payroll. He became Private Wojtek, soldier of the Polish the Second Corps. As a legitimate soldier, Wojtek was allowed to board the transport ship. He had a rations allowance, like any other man, and even had his own documents. From then on, Wojtek was no longer just a mascot. He was a brother-in-arms. Wojtek's most legendary moment came during the brutal Battle of Monte Cassino in 1944. Monte Cassino was one of the bloodiest engagements of the Italian campaign. The Germans held a strong defensive line through central Italy, anchored at a monastery atop a mountain. For months, Allied forces struggled to break through. The Polish, the Second Corps, was given the task of capturing the position in May 1944. As the soldiers prepared for the assault, Wojtek wandered the camp, curious as always. But when the battle began, he showed a new side of himself. Amid the thunder of artillery and the chaos of supply lines, Wojtek saw the men carrying heavy crates of ammunition shells weighing more than 100 pounds each, and then, without prompting, he joined in. Witnesses recalled how the Great Bear stood on his hind legs, lifted the crates with his massive paws, and carried them to the artillery crews. Over and over, he repeated this task, calmly and with determination, seemingly aware of the importance of what he was doing. The sight of a bear hauling ammunition on the battlefield was so astonishing that soldiers and officers alike could hardly believe their eyes. Word spread quickly through the ranks, and Wojtek became a legend. For his service, he was promoted to the rank of corporal. The emblem of his unit, the 22nd Artillery Supply Company, was even changed to feature the image of a bear carrying an artillery shell forever, marking Wojtek's place in their history. When the war finally ended in 1945, the Polish soldiers faced a bitter reality. Their homeland had fallen under Soviet influence, and many could not return. As the unit was demobilized, Wojtek was transported with them to Scotland. There, he lived for a time in a camp with his comrades. But eventually, the soldiers dispersed into civilian life, and Wojtek was entrusted to the Edinburgh Zoo. For the rest of his days, Wojtek lived in Scotland, but he was never forgotten by the men who had fought beside him. Veterans of the Polish II Corps would visit him at the zoo, calling out his name in Polish. Each time, Wojtek would perk up, recognizing the voices of his old companions. He would stand on his hind legs, waving his paws, just as he had during his army days. Wojtek lived until 1963, passing away at the age of 21. Wojtek's story is more than just a curiosity. It is a reminder of the ways in which war, so often cruel and dehumanizing, can also give rise to unexpected bonds of love, loyalty, and companionship. The soldiers who carried Wojtek across deserts, mountains, and battlefields did not just save a bear cub. In many ways, the bear also saved them. He gave them joy when joy was scarce. He gave them loyalty when betrayal was common. And in the Battle of Monte Cassino, he gave them his strength when it was most needed. Today, Wojtek is remembered with statues in Poland, Scotland, and even Italy. His story has been told in books, documentaries, and plays. But perhaps the most enduring part of his legacy is the simple truth he embodied, that in the darkest of times, friendship, no matter how unlikely, can carry us through. And so, the tale of Wojtek comes to a close. A bear who became a soldier, a cub who grew into a comrade, and a story so improbable that, if it weren't true, you might think it was just a legend. But history remembers him not as a fable, but as Corporal Wojtek, soldier of World War II.